5, 4, 3, 2. Make sure you give it about 30 seconds or so.
Okay. I'm gonna check the participants bar.
All right, we are live.
They start flowing in. All right, guys, welcome. We're gonna start very soon, and yeah, we're gonna wait for more people to flow into the attendees bar. Okay. Welcome everybody to Mad Live. My name is Miles Murray. I'm an Academy Ambassador for the Media Arts and Design Academy. And today we have Mr. Rubama. He's gonna be talking about what he does, how he travels, everything about that. And I'm gonna introduce my assistant here.
Hello, my name is Alexis Alexander Jr. I am the Academy Ambassador for the Governor Health and Science Academy. And I'm gonna pass it back to Miles now.
All right. So Mr. Rubama here, he works for the Daily Post, where I might have said that wrong, sorry. He works for the he works for the Daily Post, and he does a lot of fun things. He interviews a lot of different people. He goes a lot of new places. He really has a really busy schedule sometimes, but that schedule is full of different things. He does a lot of new things every single day, and that's what's really amazing about his job. And he's really here to tell us a lot about that. So I'm going to start it off today. Mr. Rubama, what would you say is the toughest thing about your schedule?
The toughest thing about my schedule, first of all, I work for it's called the Daily Press newspaper, as well as the Virginia Pilot. Daily Press newspaper covers Williamsburg, Newport News, and Hampton, and the Virginia Pilot side covers Suffolk, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, and Norfolk. I think the most difficult part of my job is you're covering so many different areas, and it's just yourself. So I cover high school football, I cover high school basketball, I cover high school track and field, cross country, baseball. I'm the only person to cover it in all those cities. And so that's probably the most difficult thing, is that you have to try to make relationships with all those coaches and athletes. And trying to do that sometimes can be difficult being one person. So it can keep you busy. It can definitely be time consuming, but the key is just having good contact with the coaches, the athletic directors, and the athletes. So that's definitely the most difficult part of the job.
Okay, so how did you know you wanted to become a writer?
That's a great question. Great question. I actually, I tell this to a lot of people who want to be professional athletes. My dream as a kid was to be a professional baseball player. And the joke I always tell is, I didn't make it because I'm here. If I was a professional baseball player, I would be big time. But up until I always wanted to be a professional baseball player. And one day, a woman by the name of Dorothy Gilliam came to me at my church, and they asked all these kids, what kind of jobs would you want to be? And I said, I want to be a professional baseball player. And she says, well, if you can't play the sport, why not write about it? That was in the 8th grade. And that stuck with me my whole life. And here I am now. I've been in the business more than 30 years. That's what inspired me. And the thing about it was, she says, if you love to write, if you love sports, that's what I do every day. I'm writing about sports. So the one thing to do is to do something, whatever job you do in life, it's a job that you're going to be passionate about and something that you're going to enjoy. I would do my job for free. Don't tell my bosses that, but I would do my job for free. I love it that much. And I think with any job you choose, no matter what it would be journalism, law, teaching, whatever job you have, make sure you have a passion for it. And she's the one that struck that passion in me. I was in the 8th grade, and Now I've been writing for more than 30 years.
What was the most difficult thing you had to do to get to where you are now?
A lot of times, I talk to kids who want to be in this field. The first thing they say is, I want to be at ESPN. I don't think they realize the road it takes to get to ESPN. They just think they're going to just get a degree and jump on ESPN, but it takes a lot of work to get there. My job, when I first started out, I was writing about religion up in Syracuse, New York, before I even got into sports. But my professor from college knew I wanted to be a sports reporter. He ended up becoming a sports editor and hired me for the job. So the most difficult part about getting into it is knowing you got to take those little steps first before you can get the big steps. It's going to take a lot of trial and error. And that's why they don't throw you right on ESPN immediately. You got to start at a small market, a small town where there might not be a whole lot of people there, but you got to start small because that's where you want to make your mistakes. Whereas as you're making your mistakes, then when you get to the ESPN, you won't make as many mistakes. And that's why they always tell, whatever, even in sports, if you want to be a professional baseball player, they have something called the minor leagues. So before you even get to the major leagues, you have to go through the minor leagues to get to the major leagues. So that's the most difficult thing is learning during those times that you're making mistakes. But the key is to learn from those mistakes so you don't repeat them as you get to the job that you want to get to.
Okay. Hey guys, make sure you're putting your questions in the Q&A button down below, and we're going to answer as many as possible, okay? And from Mr. Ruffin, he says, what is the greatest lesson you have ever learned as a sport writer?
Being personable. If you're a person who they don't feel like they want to talk to you, then you're not going to get any stories. But the key is with me is I try to use my personality to try to, a kid might not want to talk about a certain topic, but I feel if I can break the ice and get them to speak, that's the key. And so the main thing is just to be able to break that ice, being able to speak to people, being personable, because life is difficult enough. So if you can allow people to be comfortable and relaxed and be personable, I think that's definitely one of the big keys into this job.
Anonymous viewer asked, how did you find your first paid writing job?
Interesting. Well, I was in a program in University of South Carolina. I was doing graduate work there, and I was offered many jobs, but it wasn't sports writing. They wanted me to cover courts. They wanted me to cover fires. They wanted me to cover crime, education, everything but sports. So because I wanted to be a sports reporter, I sat out and I didn't have a job for about 5 months. Well, after that 5-month period was over with, I said, I got to get into sport. I got to do some type of writing. So I started writing about religion, and probably no more after a year after I was there, my former professor from college. And this is why it's good to never burn bridges. And it's always good to make sure you have good connections with your teachers. My professor remembered me, knew I wanted to get into sports. He gave me my first opportunity to cover sports, where he ended up becoming the editor of that newspaper. And that's how I got my first sports writing job.
Okay. What would you say was the biggest struggle you had trying to get to where you are now? Like the hardest obstacle you had to go through?
I think basically letting people know that you can write. In your mind, you think that you're ready. And I felt like I was ready, and it's just waiting that opportunity. And sometimes it doesn't come when you want it to come. And that's the most frustrating part about the job. Sometimes you think you should be where you at a bigger level, and you're not. And the key with that is just having patience. Having patience and knowing that sooner or later, if you keep working hard, you can't stop working hard. The longer you keep working hard, it's gonna happen. And that's what happened for me. I kept working hard when I was working for the newspaper. I was covering religion. My opening came. And the key is when you get that chance, you gotta be ready for it. You gotta be ready to knock it out the box. Like a coach, coaches tell me all the time, they throw you in a certain situation, you gotta be ready to perform at that time. So I was able to perform when I went to Indiana. Then I came here, and once again, I'm putting right on stage. You got to be able to perform. They got to know that they can rely on you. And so, it's a struggle going through those things, but as long as you know you're ready when the time comes, everything will work out.
John Barnes asked, who inspired you to start writing?
As I said earlier, Dorothy Gilliam, she was a columnist for the Washington Post newspaper. And she's the one that said, hey, you know what? If you want to play, if you can't play the sport, you can write about it. And from that day forth, I knew that, like I said, I was in the 8th grade when she asked me that question. From that day forth, I knew that's what I wanted to be. But after that, I've met other reporters, including my editor, who was also my professor, who's now still my mentee. I mean, if I talk to him, my mentor, I just talked to him yesterday. I talk to him at least once a month. His name is Justice B. Hill. And he was a person who he was hard on me when other people were praising me. And that's what you need. You need somebody who's going to continue to push you and challenge you. And he does. Even now, to this day, he still challenges me. I think I sent him a story I thought was a good story. Everybody else said it was a good story. He says, well, you could have did this. You should have did that. And that's what you need to hear. Even as an athlete, I was also a former athlete myself. It's easy to get the praise. But when you get people to critique you, that's how you really grow. And that's what's important. And that's what he did for me. Justice B. Hill, I'll never forget him. And Dorothy Gilliam. Dorothy Gilliam is the one that got me into wanting to even be a reporter. And that's where I am now. I can thank them, as well as I've had many editors since then, as well as colleagues who have pushed me and encouraged me. And they've encouraged me to be where I am today.
Okay. So Jalen asks, do you feel as the lower levels of where you started helped you become better to where you are now in the writing industry?
Without a doubt, without a doubt. As I said, those where I was in the past, when I made mistakes, it was at smaller markets, so it wasn't magnified. But if I was to make those same mistakes now in this market, which is one of the largest markets in the country, it's magnified, and you mess up then, everybody sees it. And you can mess up so bad that you might not get another job if you mess up bad. So it's good to start off small sometimes because you get to learn all the ins and outs. Like when I first got into become a sports reporter, I didn't know about field hockey. I didn't know how to cover soccer. I didn't know how to cover volleyball. All these sports that I never knew about were wrestling. And by going to the smaller papers, I was able to go there and learn about how to know it. If I would have came straight to this market, I would have been lost. They'd have looked at me and laughed at me. It was like, you don't know how to cover this. You don't know how to cover that. So a lot of times, I know sometimes we want the big thing immediately. We want to jump right out there and be at the top, but you got to take those small steps in the beginning to get to where you want to get to. And that's why it's important to start off small and learn. Don't just be so in a rush to be able to jump to the big time. Take your time, learn, evaluate, criticize yourself, find what you need to do better, what you need to do, and then improve on the things that you do well already. So you want to make sure that when you get thrown into that situation, that you're ready to answer the bell.
Jay Ruffin asked, what have you read that you think I should read?
You should read my stories. You should look at my newspaper, look at the daily press and read stories. But I do right now. I've been Tony Dungy. He's a former coach who now writes a lot of books. I like to read him. I read a lot of I read my Bible a lot, but I also read a lot of Christian devotional books. Because not only are they good in terms of just my faith, but also they help in terms of how the athletes that they interview. And you get to see and get to know athletes at a deeper spot. So I'm able to read those things and say, okay, hey, that's a question I might not have asked the person when I interview them. Now I can ask that question. And it's good to, and the other thing, I read a lot of the newspapers and watch a lot of the news, because one thing about my job is, even though I'm a sports reporter, you got to know a little bit about a lot of different things. So I need to know about mental health. I wrote a story just last month about mental health. I need to know about politics, even though it's people don't always want to talk about, but you need to know about it. Last month, this month, I just wrote a story about going out and voting, why it's important to vote, why it's important to be registered to vote. I wrote a story about an athlete gets hurt. I got to be able to when they say I tore my MCL, well, what is that? Well, I need to know that stuff. So I can't just read sports stuff. I got to read about a lot of different things, because if I don't want to be ignorant when I go into the interview. And that's what you want to always be prepared. And that's one of the things I try to do, is to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I might not know everything about that, but I need to know a little bit about it. So if they throw it out there, at least I know.
Okay, so has writing always come naturally to you, or was it something that you had to work towards?
Writing, English was the only subject I was good at coming up, but I still wasn't a good writer. I kind of knew the language. Then, even now to this day, I'm still learning. I'm still reading about how to become a better writer. I look at the stuff I wrote when I first got into this business many years ago, and I looked at where I am now, and I've grown. You don't want to stay where you are. You want to be complacent. You want to try to reach out. They talk about coming outside your box. That's what I try to do. So when I write stories, there's nothing like when a person says, I don't read the sports page much, but your stories really bring me in. And so I've developed and grown as a writer always working at my craft all the time. You know, just like athletes, the greatest athletes don't just stop working at it. LeBron James, you can see how many times he'll go into the gym and keep working on his shot, keep working on his dribbling, working on his steps, working how to box out, how to rebound. It never stops, because once you stop, then you become complacent and you don't grow. So even as a writer, I'm always constantly reading other writers. I'm listening to what other people talk about writing, and then I'm looking at my own stuff and saying, how can this be better? So you never want to just stop where you are. You want to continue to keep growing, because you only to get the best out of yourself, you have to keep pushing yourself, and that's what I try to do.
As Hara asked, what has been your greatest experience as a writer?
Okay, I have a couple, but one of them was back. I got to cover Drew Brees, the quarterback from the New Orleans Saints. I got to cover his first 2 years actually his first year as a college player when he was at Purdue University. That was a great thrill because I watched him. I got to do a real in-depth story with him because at the time everybody kind of doubted him because of his height. They said he won't make it, but I got a chance to interview his mother. I got a chance to interview his grandfather and saw how he became the person that he is. So many people doubted him, but his mom always encouraged him that he could be good. And so that was one story I'll never forget, just covering his career. I also got a chance to cover the NCAA championships when Purdue University women won the national title. That was an experience I'll never forget because I got to go to, again, in my job, they fly you there on their money. You eat off their money. You get to, I mean, everything, where you sleep, everything is paid for by the newspaper. But that experience was great because it was a chance to see a team win a national title was just incredible. And then I can remember also going down to, I used to cover the Minnesota Twins farm team, and I got to go down and spend 2 weeks in Florida writing about a professional baseball team, and got to meet a lot of great players, a lot of great people, and that was an experience. And since I've been here, just the different people that I've been able to meet. I know most of you guys know who Michael Vick is. Being able to interview him when he got out of jail and to hear how he wanted to make lives better for everybody else. He goes out and he speaks to kids, and I see how he really truly cares about kids. He doesn't want kids to make the same mistakes that he's made. And so when you get to interview athletes like that and you realize that they're real people just as we are, it's great. So those, I know it's a lot of different things I threw at you, but the main thing is I got into this business to tell people's story. And so every week I get to tell another person's story. And that's what I love about my job. People who overcome injuries, overcome their life situations, because everybody's life is not easy. And when you see when they make it, people don't realize how hard it was for those people to be able to make it. And that's what I like about.
Okay, Mr. Ruffin asks, how would you say failure has shaped your life to where you are now?
Failure makes you appreciate when you make it. And I still don't feel like I've made it. I mean, I'm doing well for myself, but when you succeed, you remember the times that you failed. Because when you fail in those times, when you fail in anything, when you in school, when you guys fail something, you know how that feels when you fail a test. It's demoralizing. It brings you down. You wonder, can I ever do it? But when you succeed, you remember those failures. And so that you appreciate where you are that much more. And I think that's what life's about. If you don't fail, then what are you really accomplishing? Because what are you growing? But when you make it, you remember all those times you failed, and it ends up molding you into the person that you are now.
What do you like about your job?
Everything. Oh my gosh. When I was talking to Miles earlier, no day is the same. Every single week is different. My schedule, I never know what's going to happen. Now I have ideas set already about what I might want to cover for that week, but it can change at a moment's instance. Like today, right when I get off of this, I got to go make phone calls because the governor just passed a ruling saying that high school athletes can start in December. So I got to go call coaches and start that. Now that when I woke up this morning, that wasn't on my calendar. So that's another thing I got to do. But what I love about my job is no day's the same. I'm not stuck behind a desk all day. I get to travel. I get to meet a lot of different people. I get to write about a lot of different stories, and I'm passionate about it. And so the one thing I always stress when I go to schools and talk to students is find something that you're passionate about. Find something that you're just excited to do, because I know a lot of people who don't like their jobs, and every morning they wake up, they have to go to their job. So whatever you do in life, be a sports reporter, a lawyer, a doctor, I always talk about teachers. a lot of those teachers who are in it aren't in for the money, but they're doing it because they're passionate about it. And that's what you do is whatever you find that you wouldn't mind doing for free, that's what you should do. Now, it might be difficult sometimes, but if you're passionate about it, it will keep you going. Those days when you're down, like my day, like I said, there's several times, I bet you 90% of the time, I love whatever I do for my job. But just find something that you're passionate about and you'll be happy. It's not about money all the time. It's not about money all the time. I know people think it's different, but believe me, I know a lot of people who make six figures. I know people who make $1 million and they don't like their job. So every day they go to their job, they don't like it. They get the money, but half the time they don't even get time to be able to even spend that money because they're so busy working. So find something that you're passionate about.
Okay. How do you handle the pressure from your job and creating balance in your life?
Oh, that's a great question. We didn't get to talk about this, but when I go to a game, you talk about pressure. When I go to a game, the game ends, let's say the game ends at 9:30. My story has to be written by 10 o'clock. That means I have to have all the play-by-play, all the stats that I got to keep myself. I got to get all my quotes. I got to make sure all names are spelled correctly. All the facts are done. Now, there's sometimes you're going to mess up, but that, you talk about adrenaline rush. I had a game last year. My deadline was 10 o'clock. The game ended at 9:50. I had 10 minutes to put together a story. So you have to be just zoned in and ready. And so those pressures, I thrive off of it because when I make that deadline, and in my career, I've made my deadline at least, I say 97% of the time. There's been times I've missed it and they understood. So I mean, 97%, that's a high rating. And so that's my goal is to make, I want people to know that I'm reliable, that they can count on me to get that story done. So when I get that story done, I'm on a high for the next 3 hours because of all that energy that I've used. So, I mean, but it's a great thing. And I like that kind of pressure. I think it keeps me kind of young or age me. I don't know, one or the other. It's gray here. But that pressure, yeah, I love it. And because I was a former athlete, I actually was, I got a scholarship to Ohio University to run track. And that's pressure. And I think that same pressure that I had when I was in athletics helps me now to my job now, because when you're on a scholarship, that's pressure every time you step on that track or you step on that football field or basketball court or wherever. You got to perform, because if you don't perform, they're going to take that scholarship away from you the next year. And so that's that kind of pressure. I thrived off of that pressure then. And I think that pressure has helped me now in my job now, because I'm on a daily pressure. Stories got to be done by this time. If it's not, you might not have a job. And so I've been doing this job, like I said, almost 30 years. And so that pressure, I think I thrive off of it because I was an athlete. And so if any athletes who are out there, listen to me. This is a job for you. If you love sports and you like to write, it's a great job.
Where do you see yourself professionally in 5 years from now?
Retired. I hope retired. In 5 years, because I've been in this business a while. Yeah, I hope to be retired in definitely in 10 years. I hope to be retired. But I love what I do, and I joke all the time with my wife. I don't think I ever retire, because I have a job where I can write. Even when I retire from a daily grind, I still want to be able to write stories for the newspapers, but it would be on my terms. I write it when I feel like writing it. But this is a profession that is rewarding. I'm telling you, it's so rewarding. And there's nothing, like I said earlier, when a person says to you, you know what, I really enjoyed that story. And when you know you could be a blessing to somebody through that, there's nothing like it. So I actually just 3 months ago was named a columnist. And so not only am I a reporter, but now they've made me a columnist, which means I get to tell my own thoughts about things. So I've written a column about my brother passed away last month from COVID. And we've been hearing all the stuff about how, people that don't wear a mask and all the stuff about COVID. I was able to write a personal story about how I went through seeing my brother die from COVID. I wrote a story about a young man who earlier this year, he's from Green Run High School over in Virginia Beach. It was his anniversary of his death. No, I take that back. I'm sorry. It was his birthday. He died in February. And I wrote a story about the young man, who he was. And I basically told youth, teens, don't take life for granted, because it could be taken away from you just like that. That's what this young man had a bright future. his life was taken away. And then I wrote a story, another column just last month also on the how this whole COVID is affecting people, students and coaches and athletic directors, about how it's really messy. I mean, because you've been doing something for so long and then it's taken away. So I can't even imagine what you guys are going through as high school students, to have that whole normalcy gone. So how do you deal with that mentally? People think you just want to know. It has a mental impact on, and it's caused a lot of people to have to deal with a lot of anxiety and depression. And so I wrote a story about that, focusing on people that I talked to, as well as my own point of view. And so being a columnist has allowed me to, again, go to that next level and challenge me as a writer, because now I got to try to write in a way that will make people want to read me. And so that's a new thing that I've done. I think that will keep me motivated for the next 5 years, at least until I retire. But yeah, so I hope I answered that question.
Okay. Were you a part of your high school's newspaper?
Yes. I not only was I an athlete, I played baseball, basketball, and ran track. But when I knew that I wanted to be a writer, I also found time, and it was a busy schedule when you're doing all those sports and you're trying to take care of your academics. I wrote for my school newspaper when I was in the 10th grade. I then found a job where it was a local newspaper that paid me by the inch for stories I would write about my school. Then when I transferred, I went to another high school. They had a school paper, and I got on that as well. Because you can't, the one thing I always tell people, I ask a person, they'll say, I want to be a professional baseball player when I grow up. I said, okay, cool. So you playing baseball for your high school right now? And they're like, no. Well, how are you going to be a baseball player if you're not playing right now? So I knew at that point early on, I had to start writing. And so a lot of my buddies teased me because they said, oh man, you're writing. And I was like, yeah, because this is what I want to do in the future. And so I wrote for my school paper. I wrote for a local paper, and then I wrote for my school paper when I transferred, because you got to be doing it. You got to be trying it. And I would even, when I first got into writing, I even would watch a game on TV and would write it on paper, and then the next day look in the newspaper to see how my story ranked with what I saw in the newspaper. Of course, my paper that I wrote was horrible, but at least gave me a chance to challenge myself to see what it's like to be a writer. And so those are the things. If whatever you want to do, like I said, if you want to be a doctor, find a doctor that you can kind of watch to see if that's really what you want to do. You want to be a teacher, get with a teacher and see really what you want to do, see with the experience. Same thing, you want to be a lawyer, find a lawyer, seek a lawyer out and say, hey, I want to shadow you just to see what it's like, to see what you do. And so that's why it's so important. If you want to be a writer, you need to be writing for your newspaper, just so you can get that critique early on to see if it's really what you want to do.
Natasha Hill asked, what is your greatest achievement so far and why?
My greatest achievement so far is raising my 2 boys. I have 2 young men. My first wife passed away. She passed away when my boys were in middle school. And I had to raise 2 boys on my own. And they are now 25 and 24. And raising them was easily the proudest thing I've ever done. I mean, I love them. They drive me crazy. That's why I have no hair, because of them, because I lost all my hair because of them. But raising them to be young men is the greatest thing I've ever done.
Okay. Have you ever been starstruck when you met a famous person, and how did you manage to push through that?
Oh, that's a good question. Recently, I don't know if you guys heard John Thompson. He's a basketball coach for Georgetown Hoyas. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. And so when I got a chance when I moved to New York, I was covering Big East basketball, and he came into a room, and the nerves that I had it was unbearable. I was just like, I said, calm yourself. I'm in my voice in the back of my mind. I said, man, calm yourself down, man. You're on a job. Don't be acting like that. Act like you've seen this person before. So I calmed down. I took a deep breath and then asked my question. But he's the person I was meeting him. When I met Michael Vick for the first time, I knew I had a job to do. That's the thing you have to always remember. You know you have a job to do. It's okay to look at them from afar and say, wow, that's such and such. Then you go into work mode. Okay, I got to get my job done. I can't sit here and not ask the questions that need to be asked, or else I'm going to lose my job. So, I've met so many different, oh my goodness, the number of athletes, Hall of Famers that I've met. It's been amazing, but you have to, it's a job. You can admire from afar, but it's your job. You got to do your job first. If you don't do it right, you won't have a job. And if you start acting starstruck every time you see somebody, you won't have a job. You can't be in this business long, because you'll get to meet a lot of different people. And so you just got to realize it's your job. You got a job to do.
Jay Ruffin asked, "What have you done that I should do?"
What have I in my life? Work. Well, I'm not sure if he means work wise or if he means just in life. But one thing to do is travel. I mean, it's see what's outside of just our area. When you do that, I try to encourage, if you're able to, when you go to college, go somewhere far away, at least a 3 to 4 hour drive. I grew up in the Washington D.C. area and went to Ohio University because one, I had a track scholarship, but two, was one of the best journalism schools in the country. It was a 7 hour ride. I didn't have a car, so I was stuck at school that whole time. But you getting away from home allows you to learn about yourself, learn more about yourself, but as well as it just helps build you up. It forces you to meet other people. So if that's one advice. And then in terms of for my journalism career is just don't be afraid to find somebody who will give you sound advice. Like I said, I have my professor who I had him as a professor, then I had him as a boss. And in both those situations, I came close to strangling him, but the things he taught me, it has been amazing. And it is so important. Find somebody that can help you in the field of your choice. Somebody that can give you, when could bring you down when you think you all that because you did something really good. They'll bring you back to earth and say, no, you need to work on this or that. But they'll praise you. And then the biggest thing I would say is surround yourself with good people. Don't make everybody a friend. These are acquaintances, but the people that you want to surround yourself with are people who aren't going to be haters, people who are gonna challenge you, but people that aren't going to lead you the wrong way. That's definitely the thing I stress is surround yourself around good people.
Okay, Sally, this is going to be our last question, and it's from Mr. Hamill. What is the most surprising thing you've discovered while writing?
I find that the people, even the star athletes, they're people. Once you get to know them, they're people too. And sometimes we see them as stars and we think we can't approach them and all that, but you'd be surprised. They want to talk to you sometimes if you go about the right way. And a lot of times, some of the athletes that I've interviewed, I was like, man, they were really cool when I thought they were going to be jerks, but they were real cool because you have to come off the right way. You can't come up there like you all that, but if you come out there respectfully, you're going to get respect back. And so that's the thing I've really found is that a lot of these people who I thought, man, I don't know if I want to interview them. And then I interview them. I'm like, wow, they were really cool. Changed my whole thought process about them. That's the best thing. That's the one thing that's good.
Okay, I want to give a thanks for all you guys for joining us here on another Mad Live. I want to give a special thanks to Mr. Rubama for joining us and answering a lot of your questions. That's sadly going to be all we have today. And that's really it, guys. I really want to thank you all for coming. Another really special thanks to Mr. Rubama. And we'll see you guys next time, okay?